Thank you.
Okay, I started.
Perfect. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for a campus answer hour. I'm trying to look through the participants right now to see if Brad is on or if he's on yet. Brad, if you're there, go ahead and interrupt me at any time so you can jump in. If not, I will simply get started with the answer hour since it is 11 o'clock. Couple key things, like we always say, we are recording this answer hour. We will be putting the link for it up online so that will be available later. And as always, if you can keep yourself on mute, unless you need to unmute to ask us a question, and that's absolutely fine with me if you want to do that, if that's easier. Otherwise, we do have the chat feature as well that I will be trying to monitor and looking at questions and hopefully answering some questions for everyone. So I think those are the key things to get us started here. This is the answer hour for EDI, and we are going to hopefully get a chance here to talk through some questions you might have and go over some information. I know many of you would have been at the answer hour yesterday as well, or possibly even coming to the eForms one later today, so you might hear a few things more than once, which is fine as well. But a couple key notes that I wanted to go over. First off, my name is Melissa Parrish, and I'm one of the work comp program supervisors at DLI. And I know I've spoken with or emailed with many of you, so thanks for coming on our answer hour today. You have in the past normally had Angie and Drayson helping to lead, I think, the vast majority of these answer hours. And I'm guessing you would all already know or heard yesterday, but just in case someone didn't hear yet, Angie is no longer with our department. She's gone on to a new opportunity, and we wish her the very best with that, and are so thankful for all the work she did with us. She will definitely be missed, but so she is no longer here at DLI. So you'll probably see myself or a few other people around a bit more often with some of the answer hours and other work that Angie was doing prior to this. Another transition we've recently had with our vendor with campus, CapTech was the vendor, and while they are still around in some capacity, some of the main contract time came to an end, so their involvement is a little more limited now. And so some of you may have had calls set up if we are sharing where they have been on, but I think for the most part, you guys have probably dealt maybe a little bit more with DLI staff or Angie or Brad. But for any of you who did have the opportunity to meet with CapTech again, they're still here. They're just, their role is a little bit more diminished now as we're moving forward with campus. I'll put out one more call out in case Brad is on to definitely interrupt me at any time if there's more information you want to give. Otherwise, I'm going to jump right into it. Oh, and I do see, I think I already see something in the chat, but real quick, I'm just going to go forward here, if I may, and just talk about our agenda for today. We are going to kind of go through some of the releases that have happened. There's been a couple of releases, I believe, since the last answer hour, which was that week of February 4th, was the last time we had the answer hour, so there's been a little gap in there. We'll also go over a couple known issues, talk a little bit about upcoming answer hour sessions briefly, and then of course have time for questions and answers, which would be the biggest part of this answer hour. So that is the main point. And I'm going to try and juggle both things here and look at the chat here with a CR benefit error. I see when we go to the screen, there isn't an option for withheld attorney fees in the drop down. I would think there's going to be some way that the same EDI transaction, let me scroll back up, to account for the withheld fees without having to file another EDI transaction telling you. John, if you're on, are you able to address the first question here with the benefit error?
I'm not sure what this here, meaning if that's in your own system, then that's not something that we would be able to control. Maybe Kristen, you just want to come off of mute and ask your question.
Okay, it's rather long. I believe the response came from you regarding when we were trying to file a payment report and my RORA fees and costs weren't showing up on the NOBP form, and you sent a response, and I had many questions in regards to it, and apparently my there's a character limit because I was copying and pasting in, I was trying to copy and paste in all of my questions. So do you want me to?
Yeah, this is good for everyone to hear. On our website, we do have an FAQ about how to report withheld attorney's fees, but the big one, and I think it's a little bit confusing in the EDI layout, is that all of the non-contingent attorney fees are now under OBT 340. That's the other benefit type 340. So Heaton and RORAF and cost and disbursements or everything just end up getting lumped into that one area. And at this time, I don't believe any of the forms report the OBTs on them that are generated from the EDI transactions. So if you wanted to communicate those Heaton and RORAF and whatnot like you did before, you'd have to do that in some other way. The withheld attorney's fees or I should say any contingent attorney fees, if they're paid immediately on a weekly basis, they are reported under a redistribution code. Okay.
And I have no idea what that means.
So if you're paying the employee's attorney and you're doing it on a weekly basis, then that's a redistribution, and it's effectively taken out of the type. Gross distribution does not, your gross would be the same, but then you're reporting the claimant attorney fees under redistribution code K. If you're just withholding, which I think is more common, and you're withholding, say, the 20% attorney's fees, that's where we expect the net and the gross of the benefit type that you're withholding them from stays the same, but you can reduce the amount paid by that 20% that's obviously not getting paid to the employee. And then later when you release, whether it's per an award or an order or just decided to release those, then you can send a lump sum payment, and typically we think it's going to be 500 code benefit type, and listing who gets paid. It might be released to the employee or it might be going to the employee's attorney, and that's where the payment segment would show either the employee or the employee's attorney's name, and that would tell us essentially where that amount went.
Okay, so I don't know where redistribution code K shows up. Like, what am I doing on my end that makes it show up as that? And then if I'm withholding attorney's fees, I don't understand this other payment segment, because wouldn't it, if I'm withholding and paying, wouldn't it show up as TTD or PPD or whatever it's coming from? And then if I'm withholding and not paying, wouldn't an ACR benefit code error come up? And then I'd have to explain there, but under the drop down, there's not an option for withholding attorney's fees. And then if it's a payment, if the payment is per an award and I'm releasing fees, is that showed up as a lump sum? Is that a lump sum payment settlement? And so that's why it's showing up as that code, or am I supposed to be coding it differently so it shows up as temp total? I didn't understand the reimbursing verbiage because we didn't really use that in the land before campus. So that was confusing to me also.
Yeah. Sorry, quite confusing. When there's the lump sum payment settlement code, the lump sum can go with the transaction, and if it's an award order, obviously you would use that to demarcate what the lump sums are for. And if, let's say, you're paid a lot of money, and not just attorney's fees, but you've paid a lot of money to for that award order, that would all be present in the benefit segment. So if it's the 500 unspecified lump sum, that total amount will probably be reflected there. But then under the payment segment, which is similar but separate from the benefit segment, you could then demarcate who you're making the individual payments to, and that's where we could show either the employee's attorney or whomever else may apply. Hopefully that helps.
I think I'm still as confused as I was, honestly. And so if I'm withholding, and when I'm withholding fees, but I'm telling you, you know, I paid something else or whatever, and I've got these, or I don't understand where it said we could file an NT in the email if I report different
Yeah.
amounts in the gross and the net. I thought that would give an ACR benefit error, but
It would. So what
you,
and for everyone, and Kristen, you can talk about this later too if you want. But so
okay.
what we ask that everyone does is that the gross and the net remain the same. So it says if you're taking an adjustment, but you're really not, and there is no ACR if you're withholding attorney's fees. If you're paying them directly to the employee right away, into the employee's attorney right away, then that's the redistribution code. But the redistribution code also does not affect the net from the gross. Those two remain the same, even though you might be taking, say, $100 on a weekly basis and paying to the employee's attorney, because redistributions do not affect the gross. What the reason we ask for the NT is that if, let's say, you are taking the 20% offset to withhold attorney's fees, that's not present in the nets. Net is equal to the gross, but we will be able to tell because the amount paid is not adding up across the weeks and days. So the NT is just to give us a heads up. Okay, we're taking attorney's fees, we're withholding them, and that they may be paid either to the employee's attorney at a later date. It's just kind of a heads up so that we can avoid any confusion on both our sides. So hopefully that helps. Attorney's fees are more with EDI, and unfortunately with some things like the OBTs, they're lumped together. The non-contingents are all under the other benefit type code 340, whereas we used to have Heaton and RORAF and the cost and disbursements and everything, and we've had a lot of questions about those, and hopefully this call helps and everyone can kind of understand where those things go, whereas the contingent attorney fees are always under the benefit type that they're coming out of. So great question.
Okay. So an OBT, you see that, but it doesn't show up on the form and you're okay with that, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, yep, for now, that is absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. I'm still a little confused, but I'll listen to this again and see if it helps me.
Yeah, and if anyone has specific things that they're really stuck with, because EDI is so complicated and sometimes email or these sessions are a little challenging, always reach out to us and we can set up. We've been doing individual calls with people and that's totally okay. We'll do that as much as we need. So thanks.
Perfect, thanks.
The last thing in the email that you sent was that forms are being reviewed and updated. So senders might need to utilize old forms to upload to campus as supplementary forms. I wasn't clear which forms were being reviewed and when we would file a supplementary form.
You want to take that, Melissa, or?
Sure. Yep. So the Bounceback forms are those forms that are generated from the EDI submissions in general. We've certainly had some issues you guys have alerted us to, and others that we found anyway, with either data being missing or sometimes a form was missing, and sometimes it just had to do with the data being sent in. Other times, certainly things we needed to fix and continue to need to fix. So we've heard a lot of feedback on that, and one of the solutions that is available is that you can use basically the old paper forms that are still on our website. Now that does not replace submitting the EDI, because of course that would take you out of sequence and that is the actual filing. But when you file, let's say a notice of benefit, or excuse me, a PY, a payment, and when a form is generated and that's what you would send to the employee, if there's something off about it, or we've heard feedback that sometimes it can take a couple days just by way of how it's submitted and coming back to you. Some people prefer then to go use that old NOBP form to fill it out and send that to the employee. We were also given permission, I guess, by our legal department, if you get one of those Bounceback forms and there's just a piece of data missing on it, or maybe you want to add in a claim adjuster name, you can write on the actual form and use that to make that change if you need to, so that the employee is getting the correct information and that you can serve or copy as required by statute. We ask that you then, especially if you're using one of those old forms, upload it into Campus so we can see it, because then that way we can see what you're actually sending to the employee. So in that regard, we're kind of reviewing all of those forms because there are some sweeping issues that we want to improve upon. And so that solution is available for any of the forms that would be generated from EDI. Does that answer the question, I hope?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right. I'm going to roll right in with a couple more questions, if that's okay, before we move on the agenda any further, since there's some more here. There was a question that they are seeing, scrolling down, FROYs and TROYs that have been filed and accepted with the state through the vendor, but the claim rep is not seeing this reflected in campus. So how long does it typically take to update campus from what has been filed accepted on the state? So like an LBP, NOID, et cetera, can be sent out. So if we accept the filing here, it's fairly quick. Some of the processing time, John, is that taking a few hours? Do you know?
Yeah, it just depends. In fact, if you're not seeing transactions that you think should be there that you have accepted, reach out to us. There's probably something going on.
Okay. Because it should be, I mean, if we're talking days and you're not seeing anything, that's a problem. It might not be like within 5 seconds, but it should be processing pretty quickly if it's being accepted. And so do reach out if things are still missing. And then there was a follow-up from Meredith, I think, with the OBTs. It says, which code on OBT do we report all attorney fees, ref, heat, and et cetera? Meredith, was that question answered in that discussion, or is that still? Or John, you can just jump in. But which code on OBT do we report all attorney fees, ref, heat, and et cetera?
Yeah, 340.
Thank you. All right. We have a legacy claim that we filed a Shore UR on. Now I need to file a suspension SX ending temp partial payment. We cannot file the Shore SX without the employee security ID. How do I find this? So if you filed the Shore UR, if you don't, I mean, you can always email either the help desk or the EDI team, and we can help you get that employee security ID if you don't have it. That actually goes nicely into something we can talk about a little bit later, but I'll just preview now that we are getting a WID lookup. It's supposed to be in the release that's coming out tonight. And actually, I think if I can on my screen here, I was just going to show you briefly. Oops. To show you guys where that's going to be, because I think that's going to be a really good tool for you guys moving forward once it comes out tomorrow. Oops, sorry, I'm forgetting all my passwords here. Too many to remember. But when you log into campus and you go, I'm just in the test environment here, but when you go to your submit a filing, there's going to be a new WID lookup right here on the screen, which I think will be helpful. So just for future, hopefully tomorrow, bright and early, you'll be able to start using that. But in the meantime, you can certainly email our EDI team. It's dly.edi@state.mn.us, or contact the help desk and we can get you help getting that WID or the employee security ID. And then if the okay, here's another question. If the settlement is say 10,000 total, but 7,000 is going to the employee and 3,000 is going to legal fees, then report the 10,000 as one entry in benefit segment, 500 code, then payment section would have the 2 payments, actual checks with payees, etc. That the total is 10K. So Sarah, I think you were just kind of clarifying. So 2 500 payment codes, one for 7,000 to employee and 3,000 to a lawyer, et cetera. I think you're just clarifying that that's what you're supposed to do. So I'll let John speak to that.
Yeah, Sarah nailed it. That's exactly what you do if that's your scenario.
Awesome. Next question. We have defense attorneys who are asking for paper forms outlining all payments, fees, et cetera, because they currently don't print on the forms. It's a duplicate on our end to enter EDI and then upload a paper form. What is your suggestion on how to handle these? Yep, that's one of the, I think that's one of the downfalls right now of that workaround is doing something twice. If you have to do it on EDI and then if you are using the workaround of the paper forms, that's part of the conversation we're having to improve the forms moving forward. And if you guys have some feedback on that or some thoughts on that, we welcome that as well. You can certainly email that to either the help desk or the EDI team as well, so we can take that into consideration, because we have had conversation already about just trying to make sure we're not adding duplicative work in that regard. So I think that's a really good point, Deb. Thank you. Now we've got a comment here about this being confusing. Perhaps DLI could provide written detailed examples, including attorney fees, COLAs, net pay versus gross to employee, payments to interveners, reductions due to interveners or an attorney. It's certainly, okay, so that was the comment. It certainly is a complicated scenario, so we can look at providing some more detailed examples on that and having that at either a future answer hour or available online as an example. Thanks, Barry. We emailed about issues on reporting for maybe a claim number or a JCN on 2.4 with no response. Can this be addressed? Yeah, we certainly, a number of emails coming into the help desk and the EDI inbox is quite large. So we are working as fast as we can to address those emails. If there's certainly some that either we haven't gotten to yet or it's snuck by us and we haven't responded yet, I do apologize for that, Kristen. If you could forward that again, I'm assuming you mean to the EDI inbox, so we can take a look at it again. In that case, we appreciate all of your guys', for everyone, your patience with us. We know that we aren't able to get all the responses to you as quickly as we would normally like to just because of the volume, but we will work hard on that. Thank you. Another question, can my forms be changed to reflect our EDI transaction forms rather than the ones we've uploaded? It would save time not having to get into each claim to download the forms if they could be housed there as well. So I think, Kristen, you mean on your dashboard on that My Forms tab, if those forms could be there. I think that's really good feedback. We do have some feedback already about the dashboard and some of those tabs and some possible changes. So I'm going to add that comment to that story and escalate that up for people to take a look at, because I think that's great feedback. Thank you. Another question. We have an accepted medical only claim and IME has indicated MMI. We want to deny ongoing medical treatment. Do we need to file a partial denial indicating denying medical in part but not indemnity? John, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's probably somewhat up to you. I think it would be appropriate to send a PD for that, to deny and provide a narrative so that it's clear to the department what's happening, even though maybe you're adding an indemnity, but you're not covering medical. And we realize that the codes aren't the best for the partial denial codes, but if you provide in the narrative what you're doing, then that works for us.
Thank you. Meredith just confirming an answer to an earlier question, so thank you for that. What category should we upload those corrected forms under? This is an issue. In fact, it's in a later slide, just that we need more robust options for when you upload, in this case, but in other cases as well, more options for what you can upload to the claim so you can properly pick the right category that it's under. So as always, pick the closest one possible, if possible. If there's really nothing on that upload list that seems to be right at all, I know in the past we've indicated you could just pick the top one, and that's kind of an indicator to us to keep in mind that if it's that top category, that we know it might have just been kind of a default pick. And then there's always the form description that you can use, so you can put in something more specific, and when you or we click on the actual form, we would see that description. So if you need to say in there, you know, NOBP sent on such and such date to employer or whatnot, you do have some narrative space in there to add a description, which is really helpful as well. And we are going to continue to look at making those options more robust as far as more options for you to pick when you're uploading a document.
This is Bridget from Berkeley. I just had a quick question in regards to that. We've been uploading, because we're still sending out the old forms, so we've been uploading them to campus, and we have over 3,000. Are we going to be able to rename them once more descriptive options are available? Or are they going to have to stay the same as whatever we put them in the default option for what we're naming the uploads?
You know, that's a great question. I don't think that the solution is far enough along where that's been addressed yet, but that's a great question. I will put that in as feedback to say that, to explore that option so that you could kind of re-index it in a way to a different option once more options are available and it's a better description of the actual form you uploaded.
Yeah, just in general, if we accidentally name something wrong, even if we do have the right options, being able to correct the naming of a document that we've uploaded would be helpful too, as maybe an idea.
Okay, great, thank you. How do we update the insurer address? If it's on a claim, you can certainly send in an O2 to update the information. John, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add on that.
The question is probably related to parties tab. So if they see the parties tab and they're wanting a different address, that's a little more complicated. I think we have to look into that. It doesn't always update for every transaction on the parties tab, or at least it didn't at one point. So we'll try and get some confirmation as to when and how the parties tab gets updated.
Sounds good, thank you. And then I know Virginia had put in some contact info for the EDI team and for the help desk, so thank you very much for that. Next question regarding the medical only claim. How would we get a Freud to go through if there's no lost time? I think that's a great question, because I do see that coming through sometimes, so this is a good chance for us to address it kind of in a larger group. We do not have edit restrictions that keep you from filing the claim when there's not a lost time date. We've actually run into some situations where certain companies or vendors have edits that seem to require it. So we've tried to work with them to take away those edits, because there's absolutely a need for you to be able to file those FROIs, even if there's not a DN56, that initial date lost time began. And keeping in mind that the initial date of disability is the date that the employee is claiming lost time or claiming wage loss. It's not a sign that you're accepting it just because a date is there. But we don't have a requirement that forces you to have that date. So you can put in a medical only claim. And if it's a medical only, by definition, there wouldn't be any claims lost time. There wouldn't be a date in DN56. So if you're running into one that's rejecting just for that reason, and this might not apply to you specifically, Kristen, but in general for people, if you run into that, the first check is probably appropriate to check either with your internal edits or your vendor to make sure that it's not rejecting on that end. And then certainly email us if that wasn't the solution, because you are able to file medical only claims with us, even if there's not a date for lost time. Next question, if filing a suspending temp total due to IME revealing MMI reach, what would that be? S1 and indicated, what would S1 and indicating released versus actual? Yep, if you are, I want to make sure I'm reading that right. Yep, so if you're discontinuing because it's 90 days post-service of MMI, yes, it could be a release date if they're not actually returning to work. And so keep in mind that in cases like that, when you're discontinuing for reasons other than return to work, you would do that EDI filing. You can indicate the S1 with release, and then also do the discontinuance web form. The discontinuance web form is only required when discontinuing for reasons other than return to work, and this would be one of them. Next question, is campus supposed to close a file when a Shore FN is accepted? I continue to confirm in the filings on campus that FN was accepted. However, the file is still listed as open. Also, some files close after a short PUI, which is great, but not sure what triggers the closing. So yes, EDI filing is not going to automatically trigger a closure of the file on our end. The FN will alert our staff, our compliance team, our audit team, that you guys believe your claim is closed. Obviously, you're filing that FN, and give us a chance to review it and close if appropriate or if needed on our end. We do have an outstanding issue where if a claim is closed on your end, you're not able to upload certain web forms and filings that we need people to be able to do. So in fact, we have people who are contacting us to reopen claims so you can file something. So we are also hesitating to close some files right now until that issue is resolved. But it's our claim status, it's not necessarily your claim status, so it's not an automatic thing where the FN is going to go ahead and close a file. Let's see here. I thought the legal fee should be under other benefit segment quoted as 340. So if the award is 10,000, that would go under the benefit segment using code 500, and the payment section would only have 500 code reflecting the 5,000 paid to the claimant, and the other 5,000 would go under the other benefit segment quoted as 340, correct?
Yeah, that's a common misconception, and it's, you're in good company if that's what you thought it should be sent as. As a backstory, Minnesota, we put together an IRR about withheld attorney's fees at the IABC this last year, which eventually went through and added a new adjustment code that will be available helpful to us when we adopt the next version of IA's XML standard. But no, 340 is not all the non-contingent attorney's fees. So it's, like I said before, it's all the Heaton and RORAF and other disbursements. Whereas just like before, the fees that are the responsibility of the employee are reported under the benefit type that they come out of. And so that's where you can show the different payment segments for those attorney fees going to the attorney and or the employee, but they do not go in the 340 code. So thanks. Those are great questions. I hope these answers help.
Thanks, John. All right, how do we upload an NOBP for a settlement if it is not based off of a PPD rating? I've tried a PPD follow-up web form, however, it requires a rating, which we do not have. Yes, the PPD web form is only for the PPD, so it would require that rating. If you're trying to show payment of a settlement, you would use the EDI PY transaction. So you would submit that via EDI, so either directly through your vendor or through eForm, depending on what trading partner you have, you would submit that PY, and that has taken the place of the NOBP form. When submitted, it is going to produce a document that can then be served on the employee, so that looks similar to the NOBP field form, and this is one of those cases, if needed and if chosen, you can use the workaround on what you send to the employee being that old paper form, but it's the actual PY submission that we would need to show payment of the settlements. Okay, there's having trouble getting CB forms back when moving from temp total to temp partial. I'm thinking we may need something about return to work in the denial suspension area and then note partial suspension, but on the CB form, this is grayed out. Is that an EDI vendor issue or an issue on our end at Dolly here? So getting a change of benefit type CB form when moving from temp total to temp partial. I mean, if in your system, if you are seeing that grayed out area, because Meredith, I don't think you're an e-form, so it sounds like that would be something on either your vendor or your end if the actual field is grayed out. John, I don't know if you know anything else on that.
The CB form is the one that DLI is having the biggest problem with. It's very inconsistent. It's probably the number one issue, or the number one scenario where you perhaps just want to create your own NOID, because when we're moving from TTD to TPD, it doesn't always pick it up and create the form. Sometimes it creates the form when it's going from TPD to TTD or something like that. So just to be aware that this is high workaround area right now. So if that's what you have to do, that's certainly okay.
This is Bridget. We also do EDI, and I just wanted to comment. The partial suspension reason codes, they're grayed out because that is supposed to be used when you're paying two types of benefits at the same time, like you're paying temporary partial and permanent partial disability, and you're discontinuing one of them. That's what the partial suspension reason codes are for when you're doing it through EDI. That's why they're grayed out when you're trying to do the CB, because you're changing benefits, you're not suspending one of multiple that you're paying.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Yep. And then we had a really good clarification call out about a claim type code as an FYI. So there's a claim type code, indemnity, no lost time beyond waiting period, that can be used as well. And so that's a P code in the indemnity, or excuse me, in the claim type code. And so yes, if by definition a medical only claim, there's not going to be a date in DN 56, that initial date disability began, because if there's any claim for lost time or wages, it's no longer a medical only claim. Again, not saying that means you're accepting the wage loss claim, it just means that there was the claim. But there is that P code where there's indemnity with no lost time beyond the waiting period, or there's also the W code, lost time with no paid indemnity, that are appropriate to use in those situations as well. So that's good. Let's see, the event table states more than 3 calendar day waiting period. How does this factor in what was just said about medical only can be reported? We can take a look at that event table to see what is there as far as what needs to be filed. We've always had, for example, there's the new laws now where if there is basically litigation or rehab, those become reportable claims, even if in the past they wouldn't have been a reportable claim. So there's definitely been some changes. But even in the past or today, there are claims that wouldn't necessarily be reportable. but people choose to report them. Maybe there's a denial that they want to have on record, or maybe it was just by mistake that it was sent in to us, but we do accept those claims even if there is no claim lost time beyond the waiting period, but we can definitely take a look at that table. So thank you. I keep receiving rejections for using released indicator. It should be allowed, right? Yeah, I'll have to go back. We can look at the edits, unless, John, if you happen to know off the top of your head what the edits are that would reject that. But if you have an example of one that was released, or excuse me, that was rejected for that and want to send in the error message and the claim it was on, we can take a look at it as well if you send it to that EDI team email. And then some confirmation of old forms. Oh, what is IRR? There's a lot of acronyms. Yes, there certainly are. And IRR is through the IAIABC, speaking of acronyms, but that we can, jurisdictions or different groups or vendors can submit to get a change put through if there's changes that need to happen with the EDI standard, since that is, it's not something Minnesota owns at all. It's, you know, the big group, the IA, so that's where that comes in. Let's see, we filed an initial payment and now need to correct average weekly wage comp rate that we use in the IP filing. What is the best way to correct this? You would file an O2 change to make that correction. Yep. The what you do in campus tools indicate PX replaces Noid box 2. Is this incorrect? Should we be, you know, I know that there was a version of one of those documents that had the incorrect information for that PX, I think, or for the Noid box 2. So I wonder if Mike, if you have it saved, if it's an old version or if it's a current one you're looking at right now, we may need to correct it in more than one place. But an old Noid box 2 was when you were switching from temp total to, or yeah, from temp total to temp partial, for example. And so that would not be the partial suspension, it would be the CB. So yes, you are correct. You should be using the CB. And if that is currently out there somewhere else that we need to correct, let us know. We'll take a look at that. Let's see, FROI EDIs cannot be completed until the 4th day of disability. Can this be removed? It would be nice to report them if we know that the disability will exceed the 3-day waiting period. John, was that one of the edits that we were able to make previously?
Yeah, that should be working now. So now you can provide a future date. So you should be able to report before the 4th day now.
Perfect. What is filed EDI to show a claim is accepted, but temp total denied? The EP was filed to show the claim accepted. Narrative on EP completed before being sent to explain why TTD denied, but narrative didn't show up on generated document. Generated document shows claim accepted and wage continuation applies, which is not accurate. Yeah, so the EP would be used to show that when there is the employer paying the benefits. Otherwise, you could use you'd want to use the PD, the partial denial, to say we are accepting this claim, but not accepting wage loss. We're not paying wage loss benefits, and then be able to put your narrative there. So if you could submit a PD on that to clarify that, that would be great. When is the state expecting a 4A00 for an asbestos claim? You would send that to us as appropriate, like when it becomes a reportable claim. So if you have one that you need to file, that's great. I know in our facts we have, or FAQs, we have a little information about that, because you can use the UI MTC, which just, it has fewer requirements, fewer edits, if you will, because we know some of those ASB claims can be very old or not have all the information available. So you can go ahead and file that now. And if you have questions on that, do email us. But otherwise, yep, the same time requirements if it's a reportable claim. If you're just, the same time requirements that are in statute, 176, I think it's 231, would apply there as well. And then, oh, thank you, Mike, for sending that link. That's perfect. We'll take a look at that. I know we are over. If anyone is able to still stay on, I'm going to quick run through the rest of the slides here. And it's very similar, I think, to what was on yesterday. So if anyone was on the IR call yesterday, absolutely, if you need to drop, of course you may. And we'll move on though, and just briefly talk, if I can get to my slide here, about some of the Releases. So there were some transactions that were failing when multiple MTCs were coming in the same batch. We were able to correct that. So if it's a different MTC, both transactions will process as normal. So if you're sending, for example, an IP and an SX or something, we will process those. And as long as they pass all the other validation and edit checks, et cetera, they can both be accepted. So that was corrected. Some of the trading partner dashboards were not populating with data. And I believe the issue is now resolved. If you still have issues with that, you can contact the help desk, which would be great, so we can document that and move forward with that. But hopefully all of your dashboards are now populated with data. And then when an O2 change was submitted to update the claim admin, the claim did not update necessarily in Work Comp Campus. So it wasn't that specific claim admin information being updated wasn't reflecting correctly in Campus. So that issue has been resolved. As always with any of these though, if you still see an issue, we definitely want to know about it so we can go back and make sure it's corrected everywhere. We do believe it is on these issues, which is great. A couple known issues, and this is a short list right now. It doesn't mean that we have a short list overall. It's just these are a little bit more universal. We have other issues we're working independently with certain groups or people, and some things we've already talked about today, but a couple things that we just wanted to bring your attention to, including the documents generated from EDI submissions. And that's such a broad statement to say there's some issues with that. We've already kind of talked about that. If there's any missing data or if those forms aren't being created, like in the CB cases, we have that workaround available and are working towards making improvements and also making even the workaround better. So we've got some feedback already today that we'll take from that, which is very helpful. And then secondly, we have had some cases, and you'll know if you're one of them, I think, where some people weren't able to log in, and we found out looking specifically at some of those users that these users were associated to a very large number of transactions, over 1 million in some cases. And so the campus needing to run through all of those associations was timing out before you could actually log in. There's some fixes going out tonight that it should help with that issue. We've also had some workarounds we can use to maybe not have you assigned specifically to the transactions, but still have access to them. So if you're having an issue with that, please do let us know through the help desk. Otherwise, we'll continue to work on that as well. But some of the fixes tonight should address that, which will be great. And I believe all this information, I won't read through all of it because you've seen it before. We can certainly take questions on it though, but knowing where this Campus Central webpage is to get information and some tools there and educational information. And then I just wanted to call your attention that the next answer hour sessions, we're anticipating them to be that week of March 8th through the 12th, likely on the same day and time as we're having this week. So we'll get that information out there in our communications that go out and on our website once that is finalized. And then we're back to the question part, and I'm just kind of looking at my chat again. I think we're at the bottom of it. But if I miss, oh yeah, go ahead, Bridget.
I just had maybe a comment and question. I know that a ton of things have been reported in regards to the documents and how they're generating. And I know that you guys are working on them. Is there possibly something that can be distributed to us so that we know what has already been reported and what is already logged, so that we can maybe limit the number of emails going to the help desk in regards to the same items? I have a list of 15 different items. I know I've reported them all, but I know, sometimes managing all of that can be a challenge, and just wanting to not restate something that somebody else has already maybe reported, if it could be distributed to us so that we know what you are aware of.
Yep, thank you. That's a great idea. I'll ask our team to see if we can get a concise list of that and something that we can communicate out so that you guys are aware of what the issues are, and also so that, yes, you don't have to necessarily take up your time or duplicate the issues that have already been reported. So I'll bring that back. Thanks, Bridget. Any other questions? If you need to unmute yourself, or I'll certainly stay on for a minute here just to see if anything else pops up in the chat. Otherwise, I hope we covered all the chat without missing any of those questions. And again, just thank you everyone, especially for staying on a little extra long today. Thanks for your time. And I hope you guys all have a really great day. Thank you.